It is a pleasure to welcome you to the third dialogue on public policies related to the management of soils fertility. This event is framed within the cycle of conversations on the climatic and resilient management of soils that the community has prepared to strengthen the cooperation agenda between the countries in the region, starting from the exchange of experiences, good practices, and public policy tools, and the dissemination of useful information to facilitate decision-making for soil management, allowing us to confront the climate change challenges. For this dialogue, we have three objectives. First, to know the importance of public policies to promote the sustainable management of soils. Secondly, to show successful examples of public policies related to the sustainable management of soils in the region. And finally, and not for that less important, to explore how public policies can affect other aspects that are necessary for the sustainable management of soils. For example, education, research, good practices, alliances with the civil society, private entities, production chains, etc. As we have been talking throughout this cycle of dialogues, the good practices to go towards a transition for the sustainable soil management requires governance mechanisms and institutional mechanisms and governance institutions to rule their use. So it is necessary for public policies that foster the inclusion of sustainable soil management is in line and in synergy with agricultural policies and environmental policies, so that their implementation provides benefits and also facilitates those. I am Maria Beatriz Giraudo. Everybody knows me as Pilo Giraudo, and I'm president of the PRESICH. I'm a producer and consultant and member of the Rural Women's Network. I am going to moderate this session, and I would like to thank all the FAO team on behalf of Javiera Suarez, who wants to greet you and thank you for this great opportunity. So thank you, and I hope that we take advantage of this hour and a half. I wanted to tell you also that I want to greet our distinguished panelists. First of all, Mónica Antilén, who is Associate Professor of the Pontificia Universidad Católica de Chile and President of the Chilean Association of Soil Sciences. Rodrigo Herrera, Coordinator of the process to create the framework draft law for Chile. And instead of Dagoberto Rodriguez, because Dagoberto is in another mission, we are going to have the presence of Yamila Biwakusa, who is a specialist in agricultural policies and head of the Central Registry of Fertilizers of the Soil Division of the Ministry of Agriculture of Nicaragua. And Yamila is assuming the Secretariat of the Soil Alliance of her country. And we also greet Eduardo Suaguilera, who is responsible for the water management and soil management of the Agricultural Ministry of Nicaragua. Giacomo Roccheggiani, who is an intern in soil governance of the Soil Alliance of FAO, and the representatives of the FAO teams in the region, academics and associations of producers and regional networks that have been accompanying us, and the members of the soil practices communities and the agricultural family and agricultural agroecology practices. And I think I made a mistake here when I introduced Yamila. I introduced her with the Ministry of Nicaragua, and together with Eduardo, Yamila represents the Ministry of Cuba instead of Dagoberto. So apologies for that. So thank you very much to all of you for accompanying us, and welcome you all. And we will start with this spectacular agenda, but I would like to give you some details of the broadcast of this event. We are broadcasting the event with simultaneous interpretation into English, and you can find this in the interpretation access. You can access also through the YouTube channel on the site of the FAO, and also from the Twitter account FAO Americas. So we invite you to comment you may give your comments of this event with the hashtag Comunidad de Prácticas Soils, Soil Health, Suelos, and Soils for Nutrition. So we invite you because we are going to reach many people with this great dialogue that we're going to have. Javiera is introducing the agenda on the screen. So I will comment briefly the methodology and the dynamic that we're going to follow so that we can go into the topics. The dynamic of this dialogue will be the following. We will have the presentation of strategies and and related to the sustainable management of soils with the different representatives of the countries that I mentioned. We will present the experiences of Chile, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Mexico, and they will talk about the design steps and the influence of these public policies in other aspects such as education, research, and the alliances with the civil society and production chains. And then after these experiences, we will talk and we will see the presentation of the SoilX platform that has as its purpose to facilitate access to information on legal instruments that exist regarding soil protection and the prevention of the soil degradation. And next, after the presentations on the panelists, we will have a cycle of questions. And we invite those who are participating to ask their own questions through the chat in YouTube. We request that you tell us our name. I think that we would like to know where you're are participating from, and also the panelists to whom the question is directed. And so you will be certain to have a response to your question. And then after the dialogue, we're going to have an interactive quiz because we want to know a little bit more about the next steps to follow for the practice community. So we are going to be sharing here the tool to work together and collect your opinions. And we will finish with the conclusions of this dialogue. So we will now begin with our first intervention. I invite Mónica Antilén and Rodrigo Herrera to present the national view for a draft framework law on soils in Chile. And Mónica and Rodrigo, you have the floor. You have 10 minutes between both of you to share this presentation. Thank you very much, Pilu. Good morning to all, to all who are connected, and the panelists, and also thank this invitation that was given to me because of the work that we are going to show you. Mr. Rodrigo Herrera, the General Coordinator, and myself, who is the President of the Soil Department. This is the framework law, a model of participative public policies, because we believe that this is an experience that will allow us to clearly define what has happened in this process, which we will start to review. Although this is a community that is very close to the soils, it is important to remember from our perspective as a scientific society and from academia, which is the place of those who participate from academia, it is important to provide information, whether scientific or general. Soils are very important because many times the soils, it is not very well established. It is associated mainly with agriculture. However, those who study soils, we know that agriculture is a very important activity, but however, you can see 6 points that are fundamental regarding the importance of soils. First, there is a critical component of natural systems. 1/4 of the species live from the soils, and they have functions that are very important. Secondly, we inhabit and build our life on the soils. Soils are a non-renewable resource if we think about the thousands of years that it takes to be created. And about 95% of all the food that we consume come from soils. This is a reservoir of carbon. 2/3 of the carbon found in the soils, and it is a source of fresh water. However, this is even more important in our country. If we see the map to our right, we can see Chile's map, and presently, from the information that we have, which is about 25% of the country, we have established that we have 11 of the 12 soil organizations classified worldwide. And this is given the length of the country and the diverse climatic conditions that have transformed this resource in different ways and also in different areas. We know that soils are being affected and are threatened. And through this process, we have proposed these four. These are not the only ones. However, we consider that these four sources allow us to give us a perspective that is more global regarding the situation that we have in our country. The first thing has to do with erosion. In Chile, there is a great rate of erosion given the conditions of our country. But there is an erosion that is concentrated in the regions of Valparaíso and the Biobío. And also, we have the sealing threat. These are soils that are very productive, but have been soiled because of the cement layer. There is a large number of hectares, and considering that in Chile, there is around 2% of agricultural soils that are of high quality. Another fundamental point is pollution. This is a type of degradation where there are many factors that will contaminate soils. However, in this information that we have prepared, the excessive use of fertilizers incorporates trace elements as well as other elements that can reach the water systems. And because of the multiple fires that we have in our country, and because of the climate change that causes high temperatures and droughts, these generates a loss of biodiversity, thinking that around 99% of fires are originated by human activities. Therefore, this is a question that we are trying to solve. But why does Chile need a framework soil law? And why didn't it have before? Why didn't we have it before? Well, because maybe we had not joined the three words or the triad that you will see now, and that is part of this process, which is the academia, social, civil society, and the political world. Soils are fragile and not renewable. They are threatened because of what we have mentioned, and they are the source of our food sources. And Chile is one of the few countries that does not have a legislation. There are some norms that are distributed along the different ministries, but somehow they are dispersed, and maybe this is not a sustainable management as we require. And also, it is necessary to think about the future generations. So Chile needs a law that regulates and protects soil activities, maintaining the functions that we mentioned in the beginning, avoiding pollution through sustainable practices, and also to save the resources for future generations.
So we developed in 2019 a seminar where we had the support of the political world, where you can see that we got into an agreement to generate a soils law. You can see some pictures where the venue of the National Congress in Santiago, in the capital of Chile, which is of 150 persons, is full of people from different worlds that are interested in soils. And here we can see some of the faculties of the economies, some politicians, and the Senator Gloria Aravena, which was the one that supported us from the beginning. The agreement was to establish a working table where we had the politicians, civilians, and academics together so we could have a draft. And together with that point of view, with a multidisciplinary, because soils are not for agriculture, pollution, but also are based on, they are considered in fundamental science, food system, the integration to other disciplines, education, legal framework, which is very important, which we will be listening about this topic this day, that is promoted by the FAO. So this is how we started this process. But nevertheless, when we started with this process, I'm talking from 2019, but we have to go back of what we had since 1994, because since that year, with different initiatives, whether led by different state institutions, government, here we have a symposium that was carried out by a soil science institution in Chile, so was to have a law as a protection. Then in 2012, they made some propositions of degradation index, and then many years after, in 2015, the NGOs of a sustainable soil, when we had the participation of different organizations, supported by Senator Horpis, and we made in Kamenich because he already left us. And started in this working table in 2015, we started working again with the universities, with the NGOs of sustainable soils and others. And we started working continuously to work with the political world. And then we had this seminar in 2019. And with that seminar, we were able to give the right importance to these topics so we could continue improving in 2020 and 2021 with the work that we have been doing during the pandemic. And this work during the pandemic started in June 2020.
Disculpas, Mónica, que te interrumpo.
Monica, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are ready to, you're ready to finish with your time. This is the last slide, so I can give my time to Rodrigo. In June 2020, we'd start with the first meeting, in 2021 with the second one, and with the to create objectives, governance, and the last stage where we elaborate different different groups, etc. So now Rodrigo will continue with next part. Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to greet you all of those who are present now. I will just talk for a few minutes because I know we are over time, but I would like to speak this Marco draft. I want to say that Chile has a heterogeneous and dispersed legislation, as was said by the Professor Monica Antilen. And when we made a survey of the information and laws, we identified it about 50 national laws that has some type of consequence in soils, plus international agreements and the creation, the certifications and Marco. We're talking about a Marco ley, law or framework law, where we can have different competences in relation to climatic change, the order in the soil, pollution, irradiation of the soils, in the protection. Next, please. This draft is a draft that at the beginning had 4 articles, 24 articles, and transitory dispositions. But unfortunately, what we had to send to the Congress because of the present constitution, because it's established that it depends on the government to present drafts that will use all the resources. The members of the parliament can present some laws with the sponsor of the government. So we had to adjust this draft so we could send it to the Congress. So we left 2 titles and 7 articles, and you will realize that it was a great intervention since the original draft that we had at the beginning and what we are presenting now. There was a big change. But Carmen Gloria Anavena, that is the chair of the Agricultural Commission of the chamber, and between the government and the organizations that are supporting this draft. Next, please. So as to Okay, now, yes, this slide, thank you. Just to be able to get to an agreement so that the executive could sponsor these draft. I wanted to comment these because we have the signature of a letter of the commitment of the president for it. And we have this draft in the Congress, and we are now waiting for the technical table where the progress could continue improving. Or it was important to say that the application and objective of this law is for the whole national territory with the different characteristics of the different landscapes and the ecosystemic system. And it is to have a sustainable management of soil because we don't have a sustainable use of the soil. So we can protect and preserve it and restore it so as we can avoid destruction and degradation considering the different international treaties in the present, according to the present law. Next, please, the governance model. And we have some principles that we have established in this draft, which are scientific with a complete integrity. We have some organizations behind this progress and sustainability of soils and governance of soils that is not now in our very strongly in our law. It has 26 definitions. All of them are technically supported, and we haven't had any problem with these where we have been working with the government. And finally, I would like to talk to you about the model, and I will finish with this slide. We are talking about this draft, and the government have made some slight modifications. And first of all, with the different ministries, in Chile we have 23 different ministries, but those who are related with soil, they should talk. So we have to talk with an interministerial soil interaction. They should interact with a different ministry, and they should be evaluated every 5 years. In Chile, we don't have any specific entities that should take care of soils in Chile. So the National Institute to have a soils national institution is necessary in Chile so as to have information system management and instruments for the different incentives so we can get in touch with all the different parts of the country. So the qualitative information of the country should talk with the quantitative information of the soil, and then we could feed these and should be supervised by all the ministries. And this is the model that we think we should use. We think that it is feasible, and this is the discussion. So I finish with these slides. I won't talk about these two slides, so then we can leave time to the other presenters. So thank you so much. We have lots to talk about soils here in Chile, so I think that maybe in a future opportunity we can talk about these, and this has been supported by all political areas, and now it is in the National Congress. I would like to show you this document. This document is from 1994. In the last page, it points that Chile needs to have a law to preserve soils. We have been talking about 25, 26 years, and we're still discussing the same topic. So we have been talking with national policies, with the government, and with different entities, so we can have a law. Finally, thank you, Monica, Rodrigo. It was very interesting what you were sharing. And this proposition should be seen as a law, Marco, and we should be thinking in the soils that is linked to nature, and it's a dynamic system, and it needs so as not to be changing things all the time, and maybe to put the soil as the maximum good of the welfare. and saw interdisciplinarity that was given to these proposals. So thank you so much. And we will go to our next intervention, and we will listen to Yamila Diego-Cusa. She has prepared her presentation about the legal disposition for the implementation of policies in relation to preservation, improvement, sustainable management of soils, and the use of fertilizers. Yamila, you have 5 minutes for your presentation. Well, I would like to thank you all and good morning, and thank you for this collaboration, especially Aguilera for sharing our presentation. As the moderator was saying, we are representing the agricultural for Dagobertos. We will see how it works to share with this conversation for soils community. For the and the use of fertilizers in Cuba. I would like to comment that this is a very important challenge, and at the same time, it's a real joy to have a policy after our decree was not updated and it was not in accordance with these days. It was of 1993. As you all know, as the importance of soil, since the agricultural, it is important to say that in Cuba, we have considerable areas in relation to the degradation of soils, and you can see it in the maps that I'm presenting now. As previous information, to say that in the erosion, the salinization is in, aside from the diminution in organic carbon and the lack of biodiversity as the compactation and pollution should be mainly in Cuba of the inadequate management of the exploitation of soils, plus the climatic problems, and this is worse in the low perception of the importance of soil as natural resources, and it is a finite natural resources, and the generation of the in the decrease of the production. We continue. We have a problem here of the different limiting factors of soils in Cuba, that more than 75% of agricultural surface is of the 71% has some type of consequences, and 47% is of the limiting factors of erosion. And this is what we're talking about, salinity, and it is affected 50% of agricultural activity is in salinization problems, and 44% of agricultural surface in Chile is affected by compactation. So 70% of the agricultural surface is presented a low content of organic matters, which affects its fertility. We have 2,223,000 hectares affected of this acidity.
And there is a pH below 4.5. So just the productive potential in Cuba of 28.2% is found in the categories 1 and 2, productive and non-productive, and the rest, 76%, almost 80%, is in the very little productive category, or less productive. Next. So the main objective of this policy has to do with establishing sustainable agricultural practices to prevent and revert this loss of productivity of the soil. Another of the objectives, the main objectives, is to perfect the control and state services for the protection and preservation of soils. And for this, we have legal instruments, the Resolution 350 on the sustainable management of soils and the use of fertilizers. But this policy contemplates a Decree 52, which is a resolution of Law 50 regarding the preservation and improvement and sustainable management of soils. This new policy has a series of instruments in Regulation 524 of the Ministry of Agriculture, with the regulation to control the financing of the program, and also is based on Resolution 526 of the Ministry of Agriculture, which is the regulation to determine the value of compensation for the use of soils and the minimum value for rental. We also have Resolution 525, which is the regulation of the Central Registry of Fertilizers, which we didn't have before. And also, it is accompanied and strengthened by a resolution of the Ministry of Finances, which is 386, that regulates the payment of compensation value for the change in soil use. This process started in April 2020 and is concluded with the creation of this regulation in the official Gazette of Cuba. Next. So, amongst the important aspects to highlight in this framework law is the competence of each entity, state entity, to regulate this process or this soil policy in the country. And we have this image here that has to do with the Institute to regulate the geographical areas and the soils. The soils need to be regulated by the Agricultural Ministry, and the subterranean waters have to do with the Institute of Hydraulic areas. So we need to conserve, improve, and management the soils and the use of fertilizers. We have a special provision, 48 articles and 12 chapters, as well as 6 final provisions. Next. The novel aspects of this law, we derogate the previous decree and we raise the policy to a higher regulatory level. So now we have a policy that regulates different resolutions. Also, there is a regulation on the use of fertilizers, which the previous decree did not have, as well as the application of bioproducts and integration, fertilization, and also circular agriculture. We motivate and have financial mechanisms to evaluate the goods and services of the ecosystems that are provided by the soil, the preservation of productive soils for food production so that they're not used for other purposes. We also regulate the topsoil and the use of organic substrates. It regulates the controlled use of fire for agricultural areas, and there is a regulation on soil contamination and the use of information and communication technologies. Jamila, we need to finish this presentation. This is the last slide. The novel aspects, we define the establishment and functions of the national soil system. We regulate the use of fertilizers. We have financial mechanisms, and we talk about technologies of information and the access to all the documents for supervision and control. And there is also the participation and hierarchy for the sciences system. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jamila. An interesting presentation. We were listening very carefully, and I want to share with you the fact that we should not use the term exploitation, because those who are in this area of protecting the soils and keeping it healthy, we use the soils with productive purposes, but taking care of exploitation. And exploitation is a term that refers to mining and non-caring for the soils, and this is very far from all of us. So please, I want to use this presentation to share this comment of not using the term exploitation. So now we're going to the third presentation, but I wanted to motivate you to ask questions, because remember that in the YouTube chat, you can ask your questions, you can tell us your name, where you come from, and who do you want to ask the question to. So when the presentations finish, we can also respond to those questions, and we want you to disseminate this activity in the social networks. There is this hashtag Comunidad de Prácticas, soils, soil health, soils for nutrition. So in this way, we can reach many more people so that they know about our conviction and the great work that is being done to care for the soils. So we will continue on this third presentation. We are going to give the floor to Mario Perez, who will present to us the National Soil Strategy for Sustainable Agriculture, ENASAS, that is from Mexico. So you have the floor, Mario. You have 5 minutes to share your presentation with us. Thank you very much. I would like to know if you can see my presentation. Yes, we can see it. So thank you very much, and I would like to start by thanking the invitation to all these organizers and the audience that is accompanying us today. And as you mentioned, I am going to present the National Soil Strategy for Sustainable Agriculture from Mexico. I am going to take some of the references that my colleagues mentioned regarding the issues that we have in many of our Latin American countries, where the soil legislation is fragmented, and sometimes there is a law regarding soils in the case of Mexico, for example, but it is not included in an instrument that allows us to have a sustainable management and systemic and economic management of this element that is so important. Amongst these instruments, we have visions that could contradict each other, where the soil can be seen as a resource or as a property. But in this context, the Agricultural Department of Mexico took as an initiative to develop a national strategy so that it could care for all these problems and start carrying out concrete actions, as well as to prepare the pathway to establish instruments that are more for the long term. So ENASAS, as we know this in Mexico, started its path in the commemoration of the Soil World Day 2020. And after having a series of important events that highlighted the relevance of preserving the soils, the Secretary of Agriculture of Mexico established the development of this instrument with the participation of different entities from the government and academia, and also the support of the FAO through the national pillars that play an important role for the development of this strategy. So in this commemoration of the Soil Day 2020, we presented a first draft. Right now, we have this strategy published in our official gazette. And this strategy has a structure that is concrete regarding the sustainable management of soils, the restoration of soils, the importance of having information and also to carry out monitoring, issues that have to do with raising awareness, because this is fundamental for soil management, the integration of knowledge and the coordination and cooperation, as well as the harmonization and updating of the norms. This is the backbone of soil governance, and without this, it would be impossible to reach the objectives of this strategy. So basically is to foster and coordinate the sustainable management of soils. This is for the well-being of the population, and also this is a strategy that wants to integrate a systemic perspective where we not only see the productive part of the soil, but we also recognize all of its benefits. And also we want to raise awareness about this resource and integrate local knowledge to foster this information. So why do we generate this strategy and we take it as a starting point for other instruments that have a greater scope? In our country, around 12% of our surface is destined to agriculture. Around half of this are grasslands, where there is a diffuse border between the different types of soils. And focusing on the arable soils, if we do a very simple relationship with the population, there is 1/3 of the surface of a football field that is available per inhabitant. So since population is increasing and the soils are being lost due to different factors, whether natural or because of the human activities, we decided to take this strategy as the starting point of our actions, taking into consideration that approximately 64% of the soils have some type of degradation. As our colleague from Cuba mentioned, these are areas of high risk, and Mexico has them as well. So there is a loss of fertility of about 4% of the production units. And there are issues of social property that have to do with the rental of land, and also the vulnerability caused by climate change. Taking into consideration the reference that our present policy is oriented to increasing productivity in a sustainable and inclusive manner, considering also the challenges to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, our main mission in this case is to guide the national soil strategy, improve the productivity of agriculture, but that is sustainable and inclusive, so as to move ahead to food self-sufficiency. And also, we need to do this through an agriculture based on knowledge. So how are we doing in this strategy? Well, I wanted to mention some of the examples that I can mention right now. The collaboration with FAO and the World Soil Alliance, also the mapping of soils, theme networks, and also the World Climate Fund. And nationwide, we are carrying out a series of activities related to the increase of training for the development of alternatives for chemical fertilizers. And besides the problems that we have regarding their costs, we are also being impacted by the soil quality. I'm going to finish this presentation with different axes that are part of the strategy, as I said in the beginning, that have to do with the sustainable soil management through the restoration of soils to recover their quality, to develop monitoring systems through the networks that we have in terms of laboratories as well as mapping, to educate and raise awareness on the local basis. The point of reference is the program on soil protection, and here we foster research and also traditional knowledge. If we want to articulate the strategy with several actors in different areas through several mechanisms, and the highest or final point of the strategy is to harmonize instruments that are oriented to produce a general law on soils, and also to promote an institution that is directed to the sustainable soil management. So with this slide, I finish my presentation, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mario. Very interesting. Well, the presentations have really been very, very interesting. Not the multiple alliances that they have been able to achieve so as to continue with these paths. I would like to point out the link with the 17 sustainable objectives of development. And there is a great consensus for the Agenda 2020 to have the soil as healthy and soil so as to accomplish with this Agenda 2030. So thank you so much, Mario. And now we will continue with our fourth intervention. Thank you so much with the participation of Eduardo Alvera. He will present public policies related to the sustainable management of fertility soils in Nicaragua. Thank you, Eduardo. Now you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, Eduardo, we can hear you. Thank you for the invitation to participate in this meetings in behalf of the President Ortega and our Vice President Rosario Murillo. We will present briefly the work that we are carrying out in our territories, and we are trying to have the sustainable management of soil's fertility. These policies are based on the national production policies for 2022 and 2023, which are part of national plan to struggle against poverty and human development in a plan for 2022 and 26. We had different policies and for nutritional sovereignty that will guarantee the sustainable use of natural resources, which is soil, forest, and lands. And we have the productivity and competitiveness that has an objective to improve productivities and yield of the main aspects of socioeconomic dynamization. We have another policies for education of soils, and we will talk also about research, innovation, and technologies research policies. In agricultural sectors, we have a promotion strategies for sediment of basic grains, rye, beans, corns, ajonjolí, and in this sort group. And here we see the high cost of agricultural fertilizers. And what we want is to have to stress and encourage the biological fertilizers. And within here we have some actions and to strengthen this year the 20,000 producers to strengthen them in different, we have given them some conferences, congress, where we talk about efficient fertilization plans and reduction of cost. We will also train 15,000 productions for the use of biological goods. We will use strengthen with 4 laboratories at national levels to have the production of these type of products. In relation to nice grains, what we call, which is cacao, which are for exports. We have strategic actions among productivities and competitiveness. We will carry out 22,000 soils analysis, and we will increase the production with a efficient fertilizing of soils, and we will have about 10,000 10,000 goods, biological goods for the elaborations of organic products and to fertilize soils. In innovation policies, we will carry out 10,000 soils analysis at the national mapping. And so we can have a compendiums and recommendations for balanced nutrition. And we will train also 2,000 small producers in the elaboration of bio products. Other strategy that we are carrying out for vegetables and crops, we will also help 30,000 producers for organic products. We will train 2,000 producers in via Zoom, producers that will manage vegetables. And we also have other strategy for the different mosaics, which and roots and tuberculosis. And we will strengthen 2 other models for biological goods. The other strategy is for promotions and sediments and where of fruits products, and we will have 30,000 producers to carry out this plan. We have another part of our work that we have elaborated a soil fertility map, and we are also training our technicians in those topics that are related and to see how we can work with our producers in the water and soil analysis so we can see the real fertility of our soil. So I would finish here and then we can continue participation in the rest of these. Thank you so much. From Nicaragua, an excellent presentation with a great diversity and these last strength in the practice to have the analysis of soil so as to make the best decision. This is a very good proposition. So thank you so much, Eduardo, and we will go now to the last intervention and last presentation. We will receive Giacomo Rocacciani. He will give us very valuable information about SoilX platforms that will gather information related with soils and governments. Giacomo, thank you so much, and we give you 5 minutes.
For introducing me. I'm going to talk to you about SoilX. SoilX is a global database that aims to facilitate access to information on existing legal instruments on soil protection and prevention of soil degradation. And in this way, we want to raise awareness on such a pivotal topic. The platform was created in coordination with FAULEX, which is to date one of the largest database of legal frameworks and instruments related to natural resource management, food, and agriculture. The legal and policy instruments can be searched by country profiles, as you may see on your left, or by soil-related keywords on your right. The information provided by the database allows users to have the complete document as well as a detailed summary of its content, especially for those who are not very confident with legal papers and legal acts. And those are focusing mainly on the purpose and specific objectives of the instrument itself. There is, in addition, a map on the website showing those states that have regulation exclusively dedicated to soil protection, the so-called soil acts. To date, there are unfortunately only 19, just under 10% of the 194 members countries of the FAO. And among these, only 16 have a systematic or holistic national regulation about soil protection and sustainable soil management. On SoilX, you can also find many links to very important publications relating to standards related to soil protection. As you may see, there is, for example, these 4 papers: the revised soil charter, the voluntary guidelines for sustainable soil management, the International Code of Conduct for Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizer, and last but not least, the International Yearbook of Soil Law and Policy. And also, one of the working areas of the Global Soil Partnership is the soil governance. In order to implement the resources made available to FAO members, the Global Soil Partnership is working on the elaboration of a Model Soil Act. This model is proposed as a general framework to which different stakeholders can look for inspiration, and obviously not as a regulation ready to be introduced in any legal system or in any nation. Here we have chosen to relate to soil degradation in the broadest possible way, leaving aside particular phenomena that may affect the soil of individual states and or regions. And this is with the aim to make it suitable for as many people as it is possible. The regulatory framework could be used as a foundation on which the user can build a more specific regulation better connected to the political, social, cultural, and topological context of the country or the nation or the legal system taken into account. And I finished my presentation, and I really want to thank you for your attention, for your time, and for the opportunity to share our work and the SoilX tool. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Giacomo. Muy interesante. La verdad que también
Thank
tiene
you
que
so
ver
much, Giacomo. Very interesting, and it is also related with questions. And there are many questions in relation to the information intervention of FAO in relation to the different problems and regulations, the lack of regulation of some countries. So now we will start with a round of questions. So please be very concrete and quick so we can continue with the rest of the activities that we had foreseen. So, Giacomo, I would like to ask you how through the Global Alliance in Soil and in the platforms that you have recently presented, how can we work hand in hand with the needs of different countries, and mainly to be able to conglomerate the different initiatives, projects, and possibilities that we have in the soil care in the different parts of the world. You can hear the question. Yes, there is translation. Can you hear me?
Can
you hear me?
We are trying to provide this legal framework, as I just said, that every country can look at to inspiration. All the countries can collaborate with us, providing maybe new legislative framework that they are going to impose, or maybe just updating the SoilX database. And for this purpose, you may contact my colleague, Natalia Rodriguez, or the GSP Secretariat itself, or me. And I think that this is the way in which the collaboration could be more useful for all the countries and also for the GSP partners. And as I said, we are developing this new model soil law that yes, it's our main goal, essentially. I don't know if I've addressed your question properly. I hope so.
Yes. Thank you, Giacomo. Gracias, Giacomo.
Yes, Giacomo, thank you so much.
We are more than glad to help in developing your own legislative framework, of course, me and all my colleagues. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Gracias, Giacomo.
Thank you, Giacomo.
And quickly to Monica and Rodrigo, they are asking if you
Monica
can share the project.
is asking whether you can share this draft law. And the other question is how to involve the citizenship in the elaboration of public policies on soils. And I would also add to the presentation that you made regarding the civil society, whether in this civil society they are also adding the producers. Shall we answer? I think that the last part of the question regarding whether the producers are included in the process to create this law, well, they were not participating directly. However, these are in the later process, process of the project, maybe we can include them. So this has to be informed regarding the process on how it was developed through the Agricultural Commission in Chile, the academia or the scientific world, also including the civil society and also the participation of the geological department. So this is going to improve the participation, and I think that this is going to help us when the project is more finalized. Thank you, Monica and Rodrigo. Rodrigo, can you share the project? Yes, we can share this project. This is a public document. It is in the National Congress. It is being negotiated. And remember that there is a large part that is left out. And we are working now to incorporate this part on the document. And we can talk about that if you want to. Thank you. Mario, I'm going with you because the question has to do with what we were talking to Monica and Rodrigo. The question is, what linkage mechanisms exist to foster participation of the relevant actors in the proposals that you mentioned? Thank you. Very quickly, I am going to tell you that in the Agricultural Secretary that coordinates the strategy, but it is a national strategy, we foresee the instrumentation of an entity that can combine all the relevant actors and also government entities, including the three levels that can be the municipal, state, and also the federal levels, but also including the participation of the civil society and academia, as well as the private sector, considering also the possible participation of entities that can cooperate, for example, technicians, like in our case, the International Center to Improve the Soils, the Mexican Institute for Agricultural Cooperation. So we have a sectoral committee on soils that is legally created. And in this space, we are linking all the actors that have to do with sustainable soil management so that this strategy can be implemented in an efficient manner. Thank you, Mario. Jamila, there is a question for your presentation regarding what are the limiting factors regarding soils in Cuba that you didn't mention, but you presented them. Jamila, you're muted. We cannot hear you.
Disculpe.
Yes, sorry. I eliminated the video because there is interference. Does this refer to the physical limitations of the soil, or does it refer to the limitations to manage soils? Can you clarify this? Well, I think, Jamila, that it has to do with the management, because you mentioned the different characteristics. So I think that it has to do with the management. Well, for soil management, because this is also reflected in the fact that there is an approved policy after so many years of presenting different versions. However, there are limiting factors, and this is no secret. And as a limiting factor, we have identified the aging of the system and of the human resources in the system. Therefore, we are working as a function of preparing individuals, and there is a response there to this limiting factor. Another limiting factor is financial resources. The blockade has affected us in the different areas of society, and this is affecting the society also that takes care of soil issues in our country. And one response of the state to this limitation is a political will. Specifically, we are working in the approval together with the ministries of the soil specialties so as to prepare all specialists on the soil systems regarding the limitations that we have. And this is the main limiting factor because human resources are limited. So this is the present situation of our ministry. I don't know if this answers the question of our colleague from Venezuela. Thank you, Yamila. Eduardo, you showed, as you mentioned, a great diversity of productions. So I imagine that there are different scales. How can we carry out this work with such a diversity in terms of products and production systems, also territories? I am going to share part of my presentation to show you very quickly. Here, for example, to reach all the producers, we provide them technical assistance for soil sampling to determine the physical and chemical properties and the analysis of the macronutrients and micronutrients. So we are training the staff of our national production systems, which is formed by several institutions that are related to this issue. And you can see here that we are practicing this in reality, but also we carry out institutional work. For example, we have the first national atlas on soils, which is available, and this has all the areas mapped. And we have a map on fertility factors that is available to the general public. And there we can see the behavior of the pH nationwide by region. And we also have the amount of phosphorus, potassium that is available, and many other macronutrients. So what we do is, together with our producers, which is the foundation of our system, we accompany them. Our producers is not led by themselves. They have the support and the accompaniment of the government. Thank you, Eduardo. And I would like to thank you all because you gave us the possibility of getting to know the way you work, knowing the real problems that you have in your countries. And with this perspective of having the soil as the foundation for well-being of individuals, as well as the well-being of the environment. So I need to meet our times, but I don't know if you have more than 330 people connected. And these dialogues are also recorded. So the views are enormous. So we would like to thank you all once again for your dedication. And now I am going to go to Javiera because we are going to do this interactive quiz. You know that the community of practices needs to be active, and to be active and effective, they need to know and validate the steps and the topics that need to be discussed. So this is the purpose of this test that we're going to have now, so that you can all participate. I will tell you a little bit about this. I don't know if you're familiarized with this technology, this tool that is called Mentimeter. You can take your web browsers and enter the page www.menti.com, and when you are in this space, you put the code 16626090, and then you click on submit. You can also access directly through the link www.menti.com/uni, and I'm going to spell it out: ALTWQKXXQUZ, that is being shared in the chat of the different networks. So you can cut and paste this so that you can enter directly. So the question that we want to have answered, so as to collect most of your suggestion regarding how to move ahead in the discussion on the community of practices, is what topic would you like to talk about in this group? You have it here in the screen. I don't know if you could already enter. Remember that you can do that from your cell phones or in your web browser. Going to www.menti.com, you enter the code 1662609. You will find this question here, and you can answer giving 3 suggestions, and you send it. You do submit so that we can receive your answers. So here we have already the first answers that have to do with life in the soil, good practices, policies, forestry soils, green economy, microresources, the sustainable development goals, the soils, and the data cartography. Remember that for those who could not enter or could not do this, in the chat you have the link so as to enter the site, and there you enter the code 1662690. So you can answer this question. The innovation of producers, we have it here, and also soil biology. The issue of salinity as a problem. This is increasing. Also good practices here. So I have the wrong code for those who did not enter the code. When you enter www.menti.com, use the code 34823242. That is the correct code.
I think they were all using the screen, and you didn't read my code because I made a mistake there. So we are still receiving information. Please, no one should be left aside. I think that all presentations were talking about alliances, networks, interactions. So it's very well, it's good to have these type of convictions for next steps. Water. This is part of the proposition, so we can have the discussion for the practice communities. Microorganisms are present too.
¿Cómo seguimos? Parecería
How can we
que
continue? It seems that we have 410 answers.
¿Es así, Javiera?
Is it so, Javiera?
Bueno, creo que ya
Well, I think that we already achieved the great variability in different roads, so we can have these discussion groups in these practical communities, maybe a little more. And I would like to tell you that in 30 seconds we will finish and then we will close, so we can be on time as we has presented since the beginning. Well, if I'm not mistaken, good practices are the ones that had the first place, these possibilities and different topics, but direct harvesting were here because now I will talk a little bit about this seeding and when we will be closing. Communication is fundamental, was also presented in the different presentations. Welcome that we have these possibilities, and we will close the possibility that you could give some ideas. We obtained many good ideas, so there's lots of work to carry out, and thank you for the participation, for the different answers, and they will be considered, and we will also organize all these ideas so we can continue with our next steps. And we invite you all to be part of the community of soil practices and the communities of family agricultures, agroecology. You will find the links in the different chats. You will find the links of the different presentations in the chat, and then you can be part of this process that is showing that if we are all together, we can reach some part of direct seeding, and we have a slogan where we say that together we know more, or nobody knows more than what we know, all of us together, and nobody can do as much as what we can do all together, and we can learn one from others. And this was here is where we proved and where we showed these convictions. So I would like to point out that in all of the presentations, we have a clear demonstration that there is a need to generate the right public policies in the medium and long term, and there is a need to have these policies to be validated with all the actors that are parts of these and in each of the territories and in each of the different conditions. So they can not only serve to the real needs, but also that they could be facilitators of the different processes, and not that all regulations and laws will go in the wrong way, that they would be more an obstacle than to facilitate what we have to do. And this is what you presented in this dialogue, that we have a great need to work to guarantee healthy soils. And also, I would like to present the holistic point of view and the different disciplines and the systemic point of view that will allow us to validate the soils within nature as a biological system in a where we have a great opportunity to have a constant improvement. So this holistic and interdisciplinary point of view is a warranty and custody of this approach. We have different alliances, of course, of FAO alliances of soil, but there are different initiatives in the whole planet. And we also need, as users of humanity and the members of the planet, we must have a universality. We should have one point of view, and this soil platform is very important in this aspects, and also the possibilities that this dialogue is giving us, so as to inspire ourselves in those successful cases and those cases that were able to achieve their objectives, all the lessons learned, and also to learn from the mistakes made by different initiatives and different countries, and then we can avoid to repeat these mistakes, and we can make some improvements, and we can work all together. I will also repeat in my request in thinking that you will have to think in the different words. There are many organizations and institutions that are committed with the sustainability of systems, and we are working with communications and with the words that we're using, because all of those words and symbol and strategies to commit others with this commitment of producing and taking care of our soils, and so then we won't damage others, and then we can create a great development in our communities. And I couldn't find the best moment, and so as to thank with the opportunity of moderating this dialogue. I would like to give a homage to a Chilean producer, Don Carlos Croveto. He passed away a few months ago this year, and he was one of a person that inspired people in the whole world, but mainly in South America. He taught us that human intervention in nature does not always deteriorate our land, but if we applied conscience and knowledge, we can have a great opportunity of restoring, regenerating, and to improve our soil. So this is the best moment to thank this producer, Carlos Croveto, that helped us to start with our direct seeding as best big technology, so as to finish with the type of model that deteriorated soils, and they were giving resources in worse condition to new generations. And then this direct seeding, and all what you have been sharing with us today will help us to be in these productive systems that will be we can have a continuous improvement, and all ancestors and all thoughts will work together with all new improvements, and together we can have the best for our countries and the whole communities. Thank you so much. And thank you to FAO for this opportunity, and thank you for all those who were present today that will help us to continue with our future steps.